What happens when you take an incredibly fun game with a tremendous amount of good going for it, then slather it with some of the most obnoxious and pretentious design choices possible? Oh yeah, you're not gonna like this one. Despite an overwhelming amount of anticipation and hype at a time when Souls-likes were on top of the world, Remnant 2 somehow barely managed to leave a dent in the cultural zeitgeist. Much like myself with that 2-for-1 $10 lot lizard I met at TGI Fridays last week, what started off with a bang quickly fizzled out into a sullen and mournful whimper. Which obviously raises the question, but why? Naturally, before we can talk about its fall from grace, we have to discuss the heights it rose to. It's not all bad, and does a lot of great things that take it beyond the stereotype of being just another Dark Souls clone but with guns. Which is ironic, because the guns in combat are easily the most groovy thing about it. So many studios that take inspiration from Software fuck up the gameplay badly because they fundamentally don't understand what makes those games so addictive to begin with. Fortunately, gunfire games aren't filled with crayon eaters like some of the people in my previous comment sections, and they did an excellent job of making the shooting snappy and responsive. Out of everything here, the shooting is pretty much the only aspect I hope they don't tweak too much going forward, because it's basically the gold standard for how games like this should feel. That gunplay is further enhanced by how well done and fun the enemies you mow down are to go against. Both bosses and regular enemies have a ridiculously good amount of variety, both conceptually and in the challenge they pose to you. Figuring out how to keep the challenge high, while not throwing the same shit at you zone after zone, is apparently a Herculean challenge for developers nowadays.
Ubisoft.
Thankfully, outside of 1 or 2 god-awful boss fights or tedious enemy modifiers, it's hard to get bored with the overall action loop, thanks to how engaging and stimulating every combat encounter is. But it's not just the bosses that are epic. Regular enemies aren't just jobbers you tear through to get to the boss either, which means that your ass cheeks are clenched from minute 1. The best part of all is that it didn't feel like the game was designed with only the hardest difficulty in mind, which meant the transition to higher difficulties felt smooth and natural, rather than frustrating and annoying. But what would an excellent combat system or satisfying enemy AI be if the world itself was bland to explore? Dragon's Dogma 2. Well, fret not, because this game has some fantastic level design and those absolute mad lads managed to pull off the improbable. Figuring out how to do procedurally generated environments well is about as easy as figuring out how to stop my precious mint jubilees from burning after seeing Marisabella last week. But thank Doxy fuck, they made sure that each area didn't feel like a sloppily copy-pasted version of the next. The different biomes are incredibly unique and feel visually distinct, both internally and between themselves. All of this was made even more enjoyable by the sheer verticality of the areas they explored, which consistently added to the fun from both an exploration and combat perspective. Sure, trying to navigate your way around the levels can sometimes feel about as intuitive as being a high school virgin trying to undo the bra strap of Jabba the Hutt, but fuck it, we ball. And finally, the design and art direction are pretty epic. This game looks great, plain and simple, and what I really like is that it doesn't come with the usual plethora of bullshit optimization issues that so many smaller studios bring because they want to bamboozle you with shiny toys. The gear looks redonkulously good from the guns to the armor, and the coolest part of all is that the mods changed the way your weapons looked in pretty drastic ways. In fact, this system is so epic, I would really love for them to experiment with it in the next game and try to pull off what Fable 3 failed to. A reactive system where your gear changes based on the way you play and the things you use would be fucking sick. And knowing how complicated their systems can get, I think if anyone could pull it off, it's probably them. Now I hear you thinking, all of that sounds epic, my guy. How could you possibly call it obnoxious? Well, much like pickleball or trying to find joy in this godforsaken world, Remnant 2 is the kind of game that's made for an incredibly niche group of people, where if you're not a part of it, it will eventually wear you down until you finally get sick of it and give up.
What you doing?
It's like the developers said, what if we made an incredibly groovy game with great gameplay and an interesting premise, then filled it with some of the most fucking tedious, convoluted, and up our own ass design choices for no reason whatsoever. And for die-hard fans of the game, no, the story and writing isn't even remotely close to the worst part. This is gonna piss you off. You've heard of artificial difficulty before, but allow me to introduce you to the concept of artificial replayability, an idea so ingenious and not at all frustrating that it must have come from whoever the fuck decided to resell Skyrim for the 15,000th time. If there's one thing I love when playing a game designed around grinding and replay value, is having to do an ungodly amount of fucking homework first. This game's whole identity is based on procedural generation and random chance, which, sure, still an incredibly ballsy move to do. The problem though, is that rather than being a rewarding experience with a satisfying level of grind and a constant stream of surprising aha moments, it instead has some of the most nonsensical dogshit requirements to unlocking new gear, classes, and items. So much so, that for most people who don't want to go through 400 hours of cock and ball torture, you would probably need to have a couple dozen Wikipedia tabs open to have any hope of finding nearly half of all the gear in the game. I mean, there's literally a class where you have to finish the game, wear a random assortment of gear, and be a specific class to unlock it. And if that doesn't get you rock hard, how about a gun that you need to first have the right secret area in your zone for, and then wait fucking 90 minutes of in-game time before the path to it becomes available? None of these felt great or rewarding, and were made worse by how you might not even get some of those zones in your first playthrough. This is incredibly frustrating because there genuinely were a few puzzles and mysteries that were insanely fun and mentally stimulating to figure out. It's just sad that those were so few and far between, and that so many were niche and obscure, rather than only a select few that rewarded the most dedicated of players. But what if you're a 10,000 IQ individual, one of the epic gigachads subscribed to this channel who, through sheer mental superiority, was smart enough to solve the fucking Fibonacci sequence and finally get one of those sweet trinkets? Surely now it's time to kick ass and chew gum sans the gum, right? Get fucked, dork! Remnant 2 was so ahead of its time, it actually predicted the inevitable economic collapse we're all currently going through. Trying to buy new items or upgrade your weapons is about as pleasant as watching your sweetheart play train conductor with the high school basketball team. It fucking sucks, and is made worse by the fact that new areas always one-up your combined gear score, meaning if there is a new gun you really want to try out, you better hope you have the scrap to upgrade it, or else your plebeian ass is stuck suffering through overpowered enemies until it can hopefully cobble some funds together like a sad little street urchin.
Change!
But that's okay, Mama taught me to adapt. I can just do farming runs, you might think. Well folks, looks like Mama's wrong again! Thanks to the epic procedural generation and progression philosophy, levels from before don't reset chest rewards, and since most enemies only drop like 12 scrap half the fucking time, you better be ready to thug that shit out and do boss runs on repeat because you aren't getting them the fun way. It's a game that promises fun experimentation, then beats you down harder than that time my stepdad Jerry did because I accidentally took too long to bring him a Bud Light. Rather than punishing you with overly tedious combat like so many other Souls-like clones, it instead hammers you over the head with the most frustrating progression barriers imaginable and genuinely feels like they don't want you to enjoy the RPG mechanics of the game at all. I mean, at that point, just fucking ditch the whole system. A game shouldn't demand you to be patient and put up with its bullshit for dozens of hours before it actually becomes fun. That's fucking stupid and egotistical. And no, this isn't like Diablo or Hades where the game starts off good and eventually becomes even better towards the end. Here, the game puts you through a fucking meat grinder and says, "Good luck, kid, you're gonna need it." Which sure, if you want your game to stay niche and forgotten like Remnant 2 was, then by all means, Go off, Queen. But I just like to point out that Lies of P had significantly less enthusiasm around it before launch, released in the same year as Remnant 2, and is still consistently hyped about to this very day. So don't hit me with that pretentious self-righteous bullshit of skill issue, bud. Either adapt and overcome, or keep stroking your own ego while you sit in your mom's basement whinging that the game's underrated because people simply don't get it. Nobody gives a fuck.